call is going to look a little bit different. And specifically, we have a topic to cover that is one that I'm going to invite everyone right now to grab something to write with and something to write on so that you have notes to take away from this conversation. Because the visual that you're going to do pen to paper will be very impactful for what happens on the other side of this conversation. Jonathan Liebensberger, great to see your face.
Hey,
And so
great to
many
see
others.
you. Sorry I'm
Yes,
late. Great to see you, Casey.
we're good. We're just getting rolling here. All right. So I want to welcome everyone. I know we've still got people jumping on for those of you. Selena, will you put in the notes in about 2 or 3 minutes so that I can keep my brain flowing in the chat just for people to grab pen and paper and actually be writing out what we're going to talk about today. All right, so the format for today's call, the first half of the call is going to be specifically focused on this topic. The second half of the call will be focused on the conversation around this topic, and then any other items that you feel would be valuable to share within the community, or questions that you have that you want to get answered, places where you may be stuck, things that you want to walk away from. However, the reason why we're structuring it this way today is we really want to bring a different perspective and a different mindset, offer that to each and every single one of us that are out doing what we do every day in our businesses and in our lives. So this is a builder's call for those that may be jumping on the first time. Everything about this call is around attraction and recruiting, as we're talking about, and building an organization and building people and investing in people. And as we're having this conversation, you may be thinking like, well, this is a really interesting conversation to be having in the context of this call because of how you're going to see that conversation develop. So what I'm going to ask you to do is start making the connections of that any business that you're in, life, anywhere, is all about relationships, about relationship with self. It's about relationship with others. And this conversation is one that across the board is going to help you be more effective as you lead yourself. And then it's also going to help you up your skills in how you use your influence to lead other people that are following you. And really, if you're on this call, you've put yourself in a position of being a leader of leaders and using your influence to make an impact with people every day as you go out and you do what you do. So first off, I want to just acknowledge everyone for being on the call. And second, hopefully this has given you a time and opportunity to get to a place where you can be clear and focused, have a pen and paper, and ready to go as we jump into the topic for today. And then, of course, if there's anything that comes up during our conversation, feel free to put it in the chat, and anything that you want to make sure that we connect on during the conversation as well can go in the chat, so we make sure that we circle back to it. All right, so here's what I want everyone to do right now. On your piece of paper, I want you to draw 2 different visuals. I'd like you to draw a triangle, just regular triangle, on the left-hand side of your page or at the top or the bottom, wherever you feel like you'd like to put it, but make it pretty good size. Make it at least 2 to 3 inches each leg of the triangle. And then somewhere else on the page, away from that, I'd like you to draw a circle of around equal size. Maybe it's 2 inches in diameter. So just by a show of hands, can we see who's got their triangle and who's got their circle? Show of hands or a visual. Great, fantastic. All right. For those of you that aren't on video, you could feel free to raise a hand. And if not, that's okay. You could pop on video, and so we could see you. Anybody that's on my calls knows that I love being able to see people live. It's much more interesting to speak to a live face and voice, of course. Okay, so at any moment in time, you and everyone you know is operating through one of these contextual reference points. What do I mean by that? If you're operating through the perspective of the triangle or the perspective of the circle, you're going to be defining the experience that you have at any moment in time. Yay, Jonathan's got his. All right. And so this is something that I'm going to share, can be a tool or a trigger, right? If you want to build this into how you're leading people within the community of agents that you're working with. Imagine if you went into an experience and you just, ask someone the question, oh, wow, are you operating out of the triangle or the circle? Is it the triangle or the circle? And it is a way to create awareness or help someone bring awareness to what they may be experiencing and empower them. And it's also something that you can use to check in with yourself to empower yourself. We always say that ABC's awareness before change. When we increase our awareness or depth of our awareness, then we're able to become more effective because we're able to stay light on our feet and shift and change versus sometimes getting our heels dig in where we get very positioned and stuck. All right. So before I go any further, how many of you have been introduced to the concept of the triangle and the circle somewhere else before today? Nobody. Okay. This is new for everyone. All right. Leo, yes.
Just in kindergarten.
Just in kindergarten. Oh,
Exactly.
and
I'm
look
glad
at
I'm
it.
not the only wise guy. Yep. For me, it was the third grade though. Leo had me beat.
I love it. All that stuff they told you you're never going to need in school. Now you very much need it. So I'm glad we're able to anchor some value in early education as we go forward. All right. So as we look at these different shapes, we're going to start off focusing on the triangle. And there's 3 distinct different experiences that someone can have when they are operating in the triangle or from the triangle. And the first one I want you to put at the very tippy top of the point of the triangle. I want you to write the word persecutor. What comes to mind when you think of somebody that's a persecutor?
Sounds harsh.
It sounds harsh. Okay, what else? Either come off mute or type it in the chat,
Negative.
whichever.
Negative.
It sounds negative. Okay.
Blame.
There's blame. Yep.
Unreasonable.
Judgment. Yep. Blame, judgment, harsh,
Guilty.
guilty. Okay. So if this is a way that someone could choose to operate from, why would they ever choose to operate from that way?
They're hurt.
They're hurt. Okay. Why else?
They're unaware.
They don't want
unaware
to,
that they're doing it.
they don't want to take responsibility.
They're not aware. They don't want to take responsibility. Great. What else?
If you're not getting enough hugs, it can be fun.
If you're not getting enough hugs, it can be
It,
fun.
it gives you something.
Yep. So there's a payoff. There's a return. Right. Some people like to do this to make themselves right and make someone else wrong. And there's I'm sure you've come across people who like have an entire identity that they have created around the need to be right about something. Right. So oftentimes you'll find when somebody is really positioned on being right about something, they are persecuting or in persecution of someone else. Now, on the flip side, some people use this as a way to get things done. Right? We go, in this context of accountability is love, right? Accountability is love because it is supporting someone in creating what they say they want. However, how that accountability conversation is handled could be persecution. Well, you should do that and you didn't. Parenting, right? Like parenting an adult that doesn't need a parent, or reprimanding or scolding in the form of accountability, right? Which can be persecution if you really look at the energy that comes underneath it. All right, so that is the one that sits at the top. And is there anyone that has never lived in this experience themselves personally? Anyone on this call that has never persecuted someone else, that has never blamed someone else, that has never, guilted someone else or attempted to use guilt as persuasion? Anybody? Okay, so everyone's been in the experience where you've been a persecutor at times, including me, right? Nobody's left out of this conversation. So if there's a persecutor and that is a role, it's an experience, what is in the times, if you think back to where you have been acting in that way, or behaving in that way, what is the emotion or the feeling that you have when you're in that role?
Sometimes powerful, but also many times angry.
Okay, so powerful, angry. What else?
In control.
In control, or the illusion of control, I like to say. All right, how about frustration? High levels of frustration when you're in persecution, because when you become that frustrated, like, then we end up channeling that energy of frustration in persecution, or we can if we're not aware, right? So think about that. If you want to go into today and you want to feel frustrated and irritated and operate from that place, it could be a great check-in that, like, wow, when I'm feeling those things, the very next step, which there's a very blurred line, is that I'm probably going to go out in some kind of context of persecution today, on myself or towards someone else. All right, so if that's what sits at the top of the triangle, then we move to clockwise on the triangle, that bottom right. If for every persecutor, there needs to be a what?
Victim.
There needs to be a victim. There needs to be someone on the other side that's taking it, right? And so when you think about, and I want to talk about the difference between being an actual victim and having a victim mentality for the purpose of the conversation today. We're talking about a victim mentality, not an actual victim of something, right? Because anybody could be a victim of anything, a car accident, an act of violence. That is a one-time thing. However, a victim mentality as a result of that is something entirely different. We're focusing on the mentality called victim. And so it can show up as a person. And in that space, what are some of, why would someone show up in that way? Or choose to take that on, that behavior?
Well, now you're getting deep. It depends on the relationship of the person, right? If it's father, son, or child, parent, or if it's boss, employee.
Yep. So if we take it out of the relationship and back it up to like the 25,000 foot view, what are some experiences that you've had? And if it's easier to think about someone else that you're like, oh yes, my experience of them is very much a victim mentality. What is it that you experience in someone else when you experience someone with a victim mentality?
You don't take responsibility, so you're off the hook.
Okay, off the hook, like not my responsibility. Yep, what else?
Fear.
Fear. Okay.
Powerless.
Powerless. A belief or a perspective that they're powerless. Great, what else?
Irrationality. They're not typically rational in their thinking.
Okay, so irrational. And so now if we think about some of the feelings that would be associated or connected to operating from a victim mentality, what are some of those feelings?
Inadequate.
Resentment.
Inadequate, resentful. What else?
Anxiety.
Sad.
Sad. Jonathan, what was yours?
Anxiety.
Anxious, right? And so what would be the benefit or the somebody touched on it briefly. However, what would be some benefits associated with choosing to operate in that behavior? Or that perspective?
Excuses.
Say that one more time.
Excuses.
There's excuses, right? You don't take responsibility. Here, I want you to write this down next to victim. Life is happening to me. Why does this always happen to me? If it's going to happen, it's going to happen to me. Versus, no matter what's happening, life is happening for me. That would be the opposite mentality of somebody that has a victim mentality. Oh, no matter how hard I try, no matter what I do, just seems like this is how it goes for me. This is my experience, right? Victim mentality. All right. So in in the persecutor experience, we have somebody that's feeling irritated, that's feeling angry, that's feeling resentful. In the victim experience, we've got somebody that's feeling hopeless, that's feeling helpless, that's feeling powerless as a way of choosing to operate. And there's one really important thing about this this perspective or way of operating that hasn't been mentioned, and that is there is a major need to control. So people who choose to operate from a victim perspective are attempting to control things outside of themselves so that they don't have to take responsibility. And coming from a victim mentality is how they get things done. Oh, I'm just working so hard, but this, and then, oh my gosh, I feel sorry for you, so let me help you, right? I don't have to take responsibility for myself. Somebody else can take responsibility for me because I've created a space where, and this leads into our third one, someone feels so badly for me. All right, so we've got a persecutor, we've got a victim, and then on the bottom left-hand corner, there's a third role in this matrix. And what would that one be?
The rescuer.
Yeah, someone who's going to come and rescue and make it all okay. In this context of rescuing, what would be some of the experiences or the experience of operating from this perspective or this mentality? Like, how do you know if somebody's rescuing versus helping?
When you're trying to please everybody else but yourself.
Okay, so everyone else being more important than yourself, wasting your time on others. Okay. What's the difference between rescuing and helping?
Helping, you give the tools, and if they use it, cool, and you don't force it on them. But if you are pleasing people and you're just trying to like believe in them more than they believe in themselves, then you're kind of going to be stuck in a very difficult place.
Okay.
Rescuer feels a little toxic. Like you gotta have the spotlight on you. Like everybody see my cape.
Yeah. And the payoff, right, of being the hero. Now, this is like kind of a dark conversation, right? And we're looking like, what is this? How does this tie into attraction and recruiting? And like, what does it have to do with business and building business and life and people? Well, there is a good chance that a good portion of the time when you're interacting with people that they are in one of these roles. Now, I'm not saying they are a persecutor or that they are a victim or that they are a rescuer. Nobody is any of those things. They are ways that people are choosing to operate based on their mindset and perspective and mentality. And so now think about it as we're in this context of attraction and recruiting and building an organization, investing in people. There are more people that are unaware than there are people that are aware. So when you have an elevated level of awareness that you bring to working with and interacting with people, there are some things that you can start to observe as to what makes someone tick, not to fix them, however, to meet them where they're at and be somebody that now is an influence from a leadership perspective, not where you're there to make them wrong because you've got it right, just to offer either by example and sometimes in word, another way of creating an experience, right? So is there anything else that's come up about any of these three, persecutor, rescuer, victim, since we've been talking, that someone would like to share that's kind of top of mind for you, either about what the experience of that is? Yeah.
I had a question about you said the put happens to me next to victim. What's kind of the phraseology for the rescuer?
Don't you worry, I got it. Don't you worry, I got it.
Thank you.
I got it. No. You don't have to, don't wipe your own butt. I got it. I got you. My very good friend Charlie has quadruplets, and at the time that they were 4 years old, one of them was sitting in the bathroom, literally screaming because they needed help wiping their butt. And he walked in there and he stood in front of them, and they're like, and he said, "Are you unable to reach the toilet paper?" And they said no. And he said, okay, grab the toilet paper. And then he asked, are you unable to reach your bottom? And they said no. And he said, oh, well, why are you asking me to wipe your bottom when you can wipe your bottom? Like they had already learned how to do this, right? Well, because I want you to do it for me. Now, somebody that needs to feel needed, that wants to feel appreciated, that wants to feel loved, is like, oh my gosh, my 18-year-old child wants me to wipe their bottom. I'm being dramatic, obviously, right? They need me still. They love me, right? So this is like very much rescuer mentality, is when we take something from someone else that they are 100% capable of and remove it from them, which communicates it communicates to them they're not capable, because you're there to save the day, to make it happen for them. And they never develop that confidence to know that they actually are, because they don't have the space to do that, because they've never had to fall or learned what it's like to get up when you fall. I know that's a little bit of a dramatic example. However, like no matter what happens, I got you. Don't worry about it, right? It's when you absolve someone else of responsibility versus no matter what happens, we'll figure it out together.
Well, Casey, you just described my relationship with my downline. I'm realizing I am the rescuer and I'm doing stuff that they can certainly do for themselves.
Great. And so what's been the benefit? So that for everything, there's a drawback and there's a benefit. So what's been the perceived benefit of why you would do that? And then what's the drawback?
In my mind, it's done, I'll get it done. And they're feeling that I'm adding value to them being a part of my organization.
Okay. So you're using rescuing as a way to control, to get something done. It's interesting, like control shows up in every single one of the mentalities, right? So
Right.
you're using rescuing as a way to control, to get things done. And then we're calling it support so that they feel supported. That's a great notice.
Right.
That's a great notice, right? And so it's not like, oh, you've been doing it wrong, John, or oh, you've been doing it right. That's a great way to do it. Like it's not good or bad or right or wrong. Rick always talks from that perspective. It's like, is it effective in creating what you want to create, or is it holding you back from ultimately what you want to create? So in the short term, that could be really effective, right? It's like, oh, well, they don't have to worry about it. I'm taking care of it. And so they can move forward doing X, Y, Z. But in the long term, if you look at the principles of duplication and how to grow and build and create something larger, you'll always be limited by now your finite amount of energy and resources, right, that you're bringing to the table in the conversation. And if that is the expectation, should you stop, now what happens with them? Versus a different kind of conversation, which is, okay, here's where the gap is, here's where the opportunity is. How do we meet that together? Versus me do it for you, right? So now this brings up an interesting topic, because we're always talking about doing third-party validation calls. And well, someone could say, well, if I just need to have the conversation on my own, then, I'm just going to have the conversation on my own. And, in the context of doing a third-party validation call, well, yeah, I'm uncomfortable getting someone on the phone with somebody that, they don't necessarily have a relationship. They have a relationship with me. They want to talk to me. And is that rescuing, using a third-party validation call for a conversation that you could have yourself, and someone else doing that for you? Is it, or where would that sit? What do you guys think?
I think it's the third party is I can't come out for myself. I need perspective. I need a different point of view for this person. So I can't see the picture from inside the frame. So I need somebody outside the frame to come and look. So I don't see that as rescuing. I see that as a being capable of choosing the right person for the third party validation that's going to benefit the recruit.
Okay. So here's a perspective I'd like to offer on third party validation. It doesn't sit in persecutor, rescuer, or victim at all. It sits in the place that we haven't spoken about yet. And what the mistake is that some people make when they set it up is, oh, I haven't been at EXP that long, or, you know, I need someone that knows more than me to like have this conversation with you, or somebody that's been around longer than me to have this conversation with you. That framing a third party validation call in that way, where you are somehow not capable, and so you need to get someone in a conversation that's more capable than you, you're putting yourself in the position of being a victim and a persecutor at the same time, right? You're persecuting yourself and you're the victim of the knowledge you don't have. Versus in this context of third party validation, where someone may come in and have a conversation with everything you already know or don't know in that conversation, is that one of the attributes that has us distinct and stand out is the collaboration and the partnership and the relationships. And because of how much we value that and what we see that it does for people in their business and their lives, we work really closely together as a community. Everyone's busy in their own businesses and doing their own things. I'm going to see if I can carve out 20 to 30 minutes on someone's schedule that I think would be really valuable for you to be able to have the opportunity to speak with, because of the impact that it could have on your career and your life. See the difference in how those conversations get framed, right? So many times it's like, I will hear people say in this context of using a third party validation call, well, I know you're so busy, I just don't want to bother you. And what that says to me is that someone doesn't understand the value of how a third party validation call actually works and what it can do to help them and their growth and the person that they are speaking with on their growth and their journey, right? So it's important, like everything that we're looking at in these conversations is around bringing a greater, a greater level of awareness, a greater perspective awareness. Now, how often would you say, if you look at the triangle, look at what you've written on the triangle, we've got persecutor at the top, we've got a victim in the bottom right-hand corner, life is happening to me, not for me, and a rescuer that is going to, save the day, make everything okay. What percentage of the time is drama associated with someone that's operating from one of these three perspectives? Leo's got thumbs up for high. Yeah, we've got some thumbs up
Most of the
high.
time.
Most of the time, right? And this is not a right or wrong thing, you guys. A lot of people cannot function in the absence of drama. Because if there's no drama, they don't get to show up in one of these roles. And many people have built their entire identities around one or more of these roles as a way that they are in their family, as a way that they are in their business, as a way that they are in their life. And so as a result or a byproduct of choosing to operate from that perspective or that mentality, if there is something dramatic that's happening, you will find that person in some kind of drama always. And it's not like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry that you're in this dramatic situation. It's like, no, this is just a daily mode of operating, because this is how you have your life set up so that you can live into one of these perspectives or roles, because that is where you have become accustomed to operating for whatever the reason is, right? And the payoffs and benefits that go with operating from one of those three perspectives, right? And commonality on all of them is illusion of control, right? I'm in control, or I'm controlling something, or I'm influencing something if I'm from one of those perspectives. And also what's very strong in those is there's essentially an outlet for intense emotion. There's an outlet for intense emotion. So somebody's got all that going on inside, they're going to show up in one of those three ways or multiples of those three ways, sometimes even just in the same conversation, right? And when you become really aware, like I've watched myself do it in the same exact conversation, be a victim and then get irritated about it and turn into like rescuing or persecuting and then feeling super bad about it and then jumping in to rescue the situation because I feel bad about how poorly I persecuted somebody. All right, it's like crazy making sometimes. When we can go, not take ourselves too seriously and just start to have this awareness of, this is what I'm actually doing. And then ask the deeper question is, what is the need that I have right now that I'm fulfilling by operating from one of these three ways that are associated with the feelings that go with them And all of those feelings are feelings that nobody really wants to wake up and feel, yet that every day we go live out into our lives if we're not aware, and we default to one of those things versus what's possible, which is in the circle. So now everybody's got a circle. Any questions on this, piece of it before we move on to the circle conversation?
Yeah, Casey,
Tom.
I
Yeah.
just want to say this is so revelatory in so many ways. I don't know if anyone else is getting their mind blown right now. I'm absolutely ahawing on everything you're saying. Is this a teaching that you do? Because I feel like this is as powerful as your third party validation calls. Have you done a teaching on this, or is this based on a book like the Four Agreements or something? Will I find this on YouTube? Because I want to dig deeper in this, because there's some people in my life that I want to share this with, and I want to find a tactically empathetic way to do that. Where does this come from?
So it comes from a training that I did about 12 years ago through a coaching company that no longer exists. And the concepts around it have been taught multiple places, but their way of teaching it was this way because of the visual of the triangle and the circle, and the ability to use that in a very neutral conversation with someone that's been introduced to the concept or idea, and be able to use it as a daily tool of like, oh my gosh, it's not like, my experience of you is you're in the triangle right now. What's going on? And then, oh my goodness, now instead of like, man, you're really being a whiny victim, or you're being a real jerk, stop persecuting me. What's going on today? Right. Those are things that will charge an already charged situation, versus have the ability to just be like, oh, we both have the same base of knowledge. Like, are you in the triangle or in the circle? What's going on? And like, just even that, oh my goodness, you know what? I realize I am, and here's what's going on. And now that person has the ability with that awareness to be able to shift like that. Right. Or
Absolutely.
if they're like really in it, like, I'm irritated. I've been irritated for 17 days. Great. How many more days do you need? And let me know when you're done, because then I'll be willing to talk to you again. Like, take 30 if you need. However, I'll talk to you on day 31. Right? Because I know that somebody that is that committed to being in one of those experiences, like, there is nothing I'm going to do to be effective with them. And more than likely, I'm going to move into one of those 3 ways of operating to engage with them, which then pulls me out of the game. Right. And so, like, hey, man, sometimes like I am having a pity party and I've got a victim mentality, and I will tell Rick, like, listen, I know that I'm doing it. I'm not ready to shift it. Like, leave me alone. By 7:00 tonight, I will make a decision to be out of it. However, I just really want to go have a hot bath and pout right now. I'll be like, okay, like, don't attempt to help me.
Cool.
Right.
Yeah.
And
cool.
yeah.
And
So
men need to hear that. Men need to hear that. So, look, cool. You need your space. I'm good with it. I'm going to go do this, and I'll be back at 7 or whatever.
Yeah.
Because
like,
we're very simple.
Yeah, we'll have a different version of me at that point in time, right? So sometimes it's about giving ourselves permission, like, hey, I know I'm in it, and I'm getting a payoff from being in it because I'm really irritated, and I'm using that irritated energy to not deal with XYZ in my life, or not take it out on XYZ in my life, and it's going here. Like, we're so complex as human beings that when we boil it all down to what's actually going on, it really becomes pretty simple, right?
Casey, the big thing to me is that the drama piece that you mentioned, that some people are so surrounded by drama, they have to have that. And if they don't have it, they'll create it because they have to fulfill one of those roles. That's their identity. It's so ingrained. It's part of the identity. And, if you don't know that structure, if you don't know that you're actually doing that, you don't really have a way to get out of it. It's just the way you've always been, or it's the way you were raised because you model it in your parents or your other family members. And there's some people very close to me who are that way. And I've never heard this training like this. And I really want to have a better understanding of it and be able to share, so that when they're in that way, it's not just that you're being a drama queen or you're being a jerk, that it's actually, okay, here's what's really going on. Now you get to choose. And that's very empowering, because once they understand it, now they can choose to stay in it, knowing that they're staying in it, or you can choose to get out of it. Here's how.
Yeah. And so for some people, they don't feel any feelings if they're not in the triangle.
Right.
Because the only way they know how to connect to feeling, which is, well, I'm connecting. Well, you're actually in drama with someone right now. Yeah, but we're connecting. Yep. And you're in the triangle. Okay.
And it's
so
dysfunctional.
Well, it is very functional. However, not necessarily effective based on the result that somebody's looking to create, right? Which is why we're going to shift to this, like, it's very functional. And if you're
Right.
not in
It's
it,
just
I
not
mean,
healthy.
like, yeah, look at Jerry Springer. Jerry Springer was a TV show that went for how many years, and it was very functional, which is why it ran. And it, like, you know, people could identify with like these feelings and like get behind these people that were clearly victimized in some way, or, you know, persecuting, like, oh, this reminds me of this person in my life. And yes, I wish, are they listening to this right now? And, you know, all the stuff that happens when there is drama to feel, or drama to get things done, or drama to control. Right? This is everything that sits in the triangle.
Yeah.
So we move to the circle.
So are you going to teach us later that that we can really, I'm digging this, Casey, forgive me.
Yeah. So I went to
really
bed last night. I have this somewhere in a presentation that I've not laid my hands on. And in 2020, when we were traveling around the US doing little mini outdoor things in our rig, we were doing this in a workshop style, which made it really fun with small groups of people, because we got to interact with it differently. So I will commit to having something that is a more formal visual and something that's recorded in a concise form. However, there's also the aspect of somebody being able to engage with it in the conversation versus just listen to it. So yes, I'll put something together, Tom.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, so let's move to the circle. Who can guess what sits in the circle?
I'm hoping abundance.
Well, abundance is definitely associated with the circle because scarcity is where the triangle lives, or scarcity lives inside the triangle. So the circle, in the middle of the circle, I'm going to have you write the word response able, broken up into actually two words: response, RESPONSE, with a hyphen, and then able. Some people have defined responsible as what happens next is up to me, right? No matter what's happened up till now, what happens next is up to me. So that's like 100% responsible. Other people have defined responsible as the ability to respond. Not react, respond. A reaction would be something that happens in the triangle because there's some kind of fueled emotion driving it. And one of those filters, victim, persecutor, or rescuer, that it's running through, that would be reacting, running around reacting. Responding is something entirely different because it's coming from a different place. It's the ability to look at something and without anything dramatic attached or associated to it, go, what's the outcome I'm looking for? And based on that, what's going to be effective? And based on that, what's my next best step? Like, what's the next best move right now based on those things? It has a totally different energy to it. So everyone on this conversation has also been in a place where you're operating from a paradigm of the circle. And what is your experience when you're operating from that place or that mindset?
Powerful.
Or that energy?
Powerful.
Powerful. Okay, what else? Do you feel hope? So if I'm powerful and anything is possible, when I look to tomorrow, next month, next year, I can feel hope, I can feel excitement, I can feel enthusiasm because I know whatever comes next is up to me.
Yes. I'm the creator of my reality, 100%.
I'm the creator of my reality 100%. So 100% responsibility of today is, you know, only the opportunity for what is going to be impacting tomorrow. Yesterday, gone, nothing to do about it. Nothing to do about yesterday, not even a reason to talk about it unless there's some lesson that we're carrying forward to become more aware about our ability to respond and what we're going to create. Otherwise, like, all of those feelings of yesterday or recounting the stories of yesterday just put us back in the triangle where we get to live out reinforcing a story that is going to involve a victim, persecutor, or rescuer position that we then get the emotional payoff from being back in the drama of talking about something that happened yesterday versus this, oh, I learned this. I'm taking this forward with me into how I'm choosing to respond right now, which is going to set me up for my tomorrow, right? So here's the biggest thing I want you to write down. Over the triangle, I want you to write the word fear. And then over the circle, I want you to write the word love. These are not new concepts. Lots of people have talked about operating from fear versus operating from love. And sometimes we think we understand what that means, and we do to a degree, right? However, sometimes, how many times have you maybe thought, oh man, I'm operating from love, and with a new level of awareness, oh, I was actually operating as a rescuer. And I was calling it love. Right? So these are two very distinct experiences, and there's payoffs for each of them, right? And when we increase our awareness, which we now have as we look at them differently, the goal is, like, it's impossible to lead or influence someone else past the extent that we've led and influenced ourselves. So every day, if I go into my life with this heightened level of awareness about a triangle or a circle and where I'm at, when I run across challenges, obstacles, breakdowns, things that, could be seemingly insurmountable, I can run them through the filter of, okay, here's what's happening. There's no emotion attached to what's happening. There's just this is a situation of what's happening. Am I going to choose to run that through a filter and show up in the triangle? Or I'm going to choose to run that through a filter and show up in the circle? And what is going to be the difference in that, right? So if in the one hand, I want to stay addicted to the experience of the drama and needing to feel needed and having this illusion of power or control, then, okay, I might do that in an instance or in a conversation or in a situation. However, if I'm going to ask myself the question and bring more awareness to it of like, and I have this other option called operating from the circle, and what would that look like to truly respond to this situation, to engage with this situation from that perspective? And that might be a more challenging question to answer, particularly if where I sit is I'm used to responding, reacting in the triangle, right? And so to really start to, it might take, getting really present and thinking about it and being willing to call yourself on the carpet and go, okay, well, I'm going to do this. Oh, well, actually, it sounds like I'm being solution oriented. However, I have an energy of persecution under it, if I'm being really honest, because I'm still frustrated. Like there was a conversation that we were in, a family conversation last night that came up, and nobody else remembered this one thing, and I very distinctly remembered this one thing, and it wasn't about me being right, but in that moment I could have gone to victim and gone, well, oh, I didn't hear it either, which wasn't really true for my experience, and like everything would have gone away and become easier, except for then from my perspective, I'm now operating out of fear, out of scarcity, out of not wanting to be in a conflict. And so going to like a victim of myself, to just not have to deal with the situation. And just like, okay, we'll just smooth it out and we'll just keep moving. Versus what I chose to do, which is like, well, this is my experience. This is what was true for me. This is, not about like, yeah, this really positions me as looking like the bad guy, which I don't like feeling that way. However, for me, like this is true, and this is like responsible and love to myself and love to you, right? Okay, so as we bring this now back into this entire conversation that we're having about building, recruiting, influencing ourselves, influencing other people, leading ourselves, what are some ahas as it really in this context of building, attraction, recruiting an organization you may already have, and how you've been leading in that organization, or an organization that you're working to grow and to build? Jazz, love this, very much needed as builders. Building others is amazing. However, can be challenging. Yes, great. What else? Would love to hear from some of you guys.
Everything rises and falls on leadership, and this gives us a broader container for us to be able to elevate and continue to get out of the way for people that we lead, because I really think that when we're leading, if we have a container and we can't manage our emotions and we're like in the triangle, then basically we're going to have a ceiling to as far as we can grow. Versus going in the circle, I think it's an unlimited growth opportunity, because you're constantly up leveling and creating a space for people to continue to rise. So I think it's extremely powerful, and it gives us awareness, which is the most important thing. And this conversation is powerful because we're able to see the blind spots that we typically have. And I think that the best way we can get other people to see this stuff is by getting them into a conversation just like this, because nobody likes to be told what to do, but they like to discover the things. They like to see it for themselves, right? So, and I think it ties in with the third-party validation calls as well, because the third-party validation calls are about helping somebody see a new possibility, and how they could do that by partnering with each one of us.
I love that. Thank you for sharing. Who else has something they'd like to share?
I think for me, I'm looking at this a little differently than, leadership is me being the leader and saying, we're going up this mountain, follow me. It can be more of a participatory thing where I can say, this is where I want to go. Where do you want to go? Let's provide some guidance in how you get there, and let's get there together. Let's build it together, as opposed to just, I'm the leader, follow me.
That's a great point.
Love that, John.
Beautifully said. Just to add to that, besides the quality of life issues, there's a lot of stuff that comes up around, you're not trying to lead people, you're trying to lead yourself. And people that are paying attention will say, what Casey's doing there is very interesting. They align themselves to you in a value way. So love is much more powerful. But from a practical standpoint, it's just like, it's elegant, like what's the thing about a jet plane uses 30% of its fuel to take off? It's exhausting. You're taking off, you're landing, you're taking off, you're landing. You're never really, then that jet hits cruising altitude and can sip fuel and go 500 miles an hour. You go a lot further, a lot faster, without a lot of the drama. And that's where you can really start to see success.
I love that. So how would you take this conversation out now, just, having a different perspective? I'm sure, a lot of these concepts are not necessarily brand new. They may be new for some of you. They may be, just through a different filter or different perspective for others of you, based on, what you've already learned or experienced and things you picked up along the way. So how would you use this framework in the context of attraction and recruiting? And while you're thinking about that, I'm going to give you an example to get the wheels turning, right? So how many of you have been in conversations with people for months, maybe years, about coming to EXP? By show of hands. And for the people that have their hands up, how many of you, as you're having conversations with these same people, are in the exact same place, facing the exact same challenges and obstacles that have not yet been solved or moved because they haven't moved or changed? Which is why we're still talking about EXP, and they're still talking about the problem that they're in. So this, for somebody who's in the game long-term, building an organization, this is going to be the reality for some people, because now if you can look at those people and go, oh, wow, we have been having the same conversation, or they have been having the same conversation. They're essentially running up against all of the same challenges and obstacles. Let's use the one of, I don't want to be a broker anymore. I'm tired of brokering my company, right? But they haven't done anything different. So in a recruiting context, like we used to, and this is a conversation from my direct sales experience in days, when you come across people like, I don't have the money, I don't have the money, I don't have the money. Yes, that's exactly why you would do something like this, to change that situation. And then a year later, 2 years later, 3 years later, the same challenge or obstacle they're having is, I don't have the money, I need money, I don't have enough money. It became we would have this conversation that was just really simple. It's like, hey, for as long as I've known you, this has been a conversation that we're in. And so my question for you is, are you committed to staying and living in that experience, or would you actually like to change it? So now think about this in a recruiting context for somebody that's having whatever challenges they're having in their business, and you've been talking with them, you've been in conversation with them, multiple conversations over long periods of time. They have not broken through. They're still having the same challenge and obstacle. Now you're able to identify and maybe ask a different set of questions. So, Will, we've been talking for like a year, and for as long as we've been talking, you've been saying that these are the opportunities or the places where you're stuck or that you'd like to break through or overcome in your business. And we're still having the same conversation that you're in that spot. Out of curiosity, is that something that you would like to change, or are the benefits that you're getting from not changing too good to give up? And someone might go, well, what do you mean the benefits from not changing? I don't want to have all the responsibility of a broker. But you still are. So what are the benefits that you're getting? Like, are those benefits going to continue to outweigh the change that you actually say that you want? And do you actually not want change? And if you don't, that's okay. However, if that's not the case, then let's have a different conversation, right? So without like teaching somebody about the triangle and the circle, you could, now knowing that piece of information, when somebody's doing something and continuing to do something that's ineffective and staying in that place while saying they want something different, there's something going on in the triangle that there's a payoff around. And remember, it's all driven from fear. Right?
How did you ask that question, Casey? What are the benefits, did you say, of staying there versus I apologize.
Yeah. So whenever somebody has a challenge or an obstacle that is just ongoing, and it's the thing that they're like, oh, still having issues with money, Like, if that is a time, there's a time where that may be true. But if that's true 6 months from now, a year from now, 2 years from now, 3 years from now, we're still having the conversation of like just that by way of example. There's a payoff they're getting that sits in the triangle. Maybe it's that they don't have to take a bigger level of responsibility. Maybe it's that, and so they get to sit in, that place of victim where it doesn't matter what I do. It's going to be like this, whether I do it at EXP or whether I do it here. Right. So they're sitting in that triangle mentality in some way, shape, or form when there's an issue that they want to solve, that they say they want to solve, but they are unwilling to take action to do anything different to actually solve it. So when now the triangle and the circle, you can go, well, that doesn't make sense. Why would someone do that? That makes no sense. That's like crazy making. Oh, it makes a lot of sense because of all the payoffs they get from sitting in the triangle. But now there's a delicate way to be able to have that conversation to influence them to possibly think differently, right? Like we've been in this conversation for a year about EXP and how that could help solve that, or 2 years, or even 3 years. And it sounds to me like, are you more committed to just staying in the experience that you're in, where you're experiencing this and this and this and this? Like, I mean, is that what you use to motivate yourself? It's okay if it is, but let's just we don't need to talk about something that's never going to happen because you want to stay in that experience. No, I don't want to stay in that experience. Okay, well then let's have a different conversation. What are you going to be willing to do different and when to shift it? And then you're walking them through a different conversation, a different experience. So sometimes it is in the context of somebody that's learning based and that's looking for awareness and that's looking to be more effective. The idea of this conversation around the triangle and the circle, huge, right? I remember when I learned it the first time, I was like, oh my goodness, I was calling myself out so much from wow, I really live in the triangle a lot. I didn't even realize how much I was living in the triangle. And my awareness around it was like, holy smokes, now that I'm aware of that, I'm going to choose differently. Or I'm going to catch myself faster when I'm doing that, or I'm going to own up to the fact that I am, right? For somebody who's really committing to being in the triangle and they hear this information, they're just going to get pissed off because now they know that and that you can see, and they don't want it to be different because they built an entire identity around life in the triangle, right? And then you maybe from a place of doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result, or think, I'm just going to camp out on them until they see the light. And now you are somehow in the triangle with them, persecuting them and trying to control them to make a different decision called, this is better for you. Let me rescue you over to EXP, when they have no actual desire to get out of the triangle. and to move into something that is actually going to be expansive, where they can create abundance, and now they've got a vehicle to do it. Well, why? Because, oh my goodness, now there's illumination of if they come over here and they do nothing to grow their sales business, or they say they want to create leverage in their life and they don't talk to anyone about EXP. Now they're exposed, right? And nobody wants to be exposed that is committed to living in the triangle. So, like, is it time to say next to some people? This is, asking yourself, is it time to say next until they've had a shift, right? Sometimes it's like, hey, there's some personal development work that we recommend. Are you open to it? Like, do you really want change? Are you open to it? Like, go do that work and then we'll talk, right? And you have somebody else that is that place for them to go create awareness, to take responsibility, to see things through a different perspective. And then they're ready for the conversation that you've been attempting to have with them that felt like pushing a concrete ball uphill both ways, right? Because they're in a different mindset, they're in a different perspective. So you can also, with this awareness, utilize where your energy is going in the attraction, recruiting, and building game. Who's getting your energy, right? And are you like wanting to move someone so badly that's not moving, that's not ready to move, and may not be ready to move for a long time, that could have gone to 10 other people that are waiting for you to, or someone to offer them a better option, a better opportunity, or a better something, that when it came like, yes, that's me. What do I need to do? Right? So how you manage your own energy, and how you manage energy with people that you may be in conversation with. All right, we are coming up to the top of the hour. And this call went a little bit longer and deeper than I had anticipated it going. However, it's kind of a really deep, robust subject. So thank you for being willing to enter into the conversation together with me, to be able to explore it, to increase awareness. Like, I'm increasing my own awareness of these places where I show up like that, just by virtue of talking about it, right? So generally we teach what there is for us to learn, and at a deeper level, right? Teaching it over and over and over again to get at a deeper level. So appreciate each and every one of you. We're 2 weeks out from EXPCon. We've got that special segment that'll be happening with Cortland on Monday afternoon, which is going to be around activating desire in yourself and others, and moving from a manipulation to influence, and what that specifically looks like. We're excited for that session and seeing you there. Thank you to each and every one of you for who you are and the difference that you're making every day as you go out and are touching people's lives, and your commitment to learning, to growing, and continue to becoming more aware and improving and making an impact and all of that good, juicy stuff. Yes, there's recordings of this, and all of the recordings are on empirebuilderspro.live, or excuse me, empirebuilders.pro under the resources tab at the back. All of the recordings are housed there on YouTube channels. You can go find them for all the live calls that we do. So thank you all for being you. Love you all. Make it a great rest of your day. And triangle or circle, triangle or circle. Thank you, kindergarten teacher.